Everyone. I don't know how to get us all excited. Is Della in the room? Because he seems to know how to get people excited about that quick. Where is he? All right, if I get into trouble, Della, chime in and we'll get things going. But I wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to be a part of the Insiders. This is my first summit, and I'm quite excited to be here. And I had two takeaways from yesterday. I'm here to talk about creating an engaging experience, and the first takeaway was, what better opportunity to create an engaging experience than a summit like this in a facility like this. This hotel, I think, is fantastic, and if any of you have been lost, and it's easy to get lost here, and you ask the hotel people, where do I find this? I don't know if you've noticed that, but they take you to exactly where you want to go. They don't just say, oh, it's over there. I'm going to touch on this, but this is one of the ways you create an engaging experience. The other thing that struck me is that there's something significant going on here. When you look out at this room, you represent potentially 1 billion or more marketing impressions. The likes of Dell, and we heard from YesMail, and Exact Target, and StrongMail, many of the brands that are represented here. It's astounding. I mean, think about that opportunity. In the next year, you are going to send out over 1 billion marketing messages. You would hope at least a couple of them will be right on. And today, I'm here to help make sure that more of those messages are right on, that they engage constituents that you're concerned about, and drive business performance. Because it's not just about engagement. I think it's actually about driving business performance. As Morgan said, my name is Ken Greer, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Augeo Marketing. They're a loyalty marketing company that specifically addresses 4 constituencies. They address customer groups, businesses in a business-to-business kind of environment, employees, and members of organizations. But before we get going and go in too far how to build an engaging email marketing experience, I wanted to share a letter with you, and I have to read it because I want to get it right. I got this letter, and it says, Dear Ken, 6 months ago, I was not doing very well. I couldn't find a job, got kicked out of my apartment, my best friend moved away, I was lonely and desperate. I was sitting in a coffee shop because they had free Wi-Fi when suddenly an email from your company popped up into my inbox. I usually don't open that marketing stuff, but this one caught my eye. Anyway, I went to the motivational event that you were promising, and the very next day, hard to believe, I found a job. Soon, I had enough money to buy a car, and I got the cutest little puppy. And guess what? I have a new boyfriend. In fact, we bought a house with a huge hot tub for all my friends. And I'm proud to say, in 2 more months, I'm planning on quitting my job, starting the bakery I always wanted, because Rodney and I are getting married. All of this because I opened your email. Thanks, Ken. You changed my life. Well, I don't know how many of you get letters like this, but when you get these kind of letters, you keep them, and you use them when you speak to large groups about engagement marketing. But I like to start with something like this because at conferences like these, too often we're talking about, well, things I don't even know what the real name is, but CRM and ISP and ESP and a million other acronyms. We're talking about numbers and facts and figures. And today, for the next half hour or a little bit more, I want to try to focus our attention on that person. Because when you send out these billion emails, it's not really a billion emails that's important. What's important is the one email that we sent to this woman that changed her life. I've devoted my entire career to creating these kind of experiences, these engaging experiences, where you expose somebody to a marketing message and it changes their life. And I challenge all of you to set that as a goal. Don't try to think of the next campaign or the 50 million people who are going to receive that email from you. Try to think of that one person who's sitting in the coffee shop, who needs that product your company is selling, and you want to offer it up to her at a reasonable price. It's really about marketing, at least having a mindset of marketing on a one-to-one basis and trying as much as you can to create that extraordinary kind of experience. I've been lucky in my career in that I've had a chance to work with some really fantastic clients. And I remember one in particular, many, many years ago, I got a call from a small company. They said, we're just a startup. We have like no money. In fact, we don't even have a name for our company. And the product we're selling, well, nobody's ever heard of it. And once they see it, they won't know exactly what to do with it. Can you help? And I said, well, of course. I'm an engagement engineer. I can get you huge constituencies to believe in your product, to become aware of your brand, and eventually to become brand advocates so that they tell all their friends, and their friends tell their friends, and we'll build a great company for you. I'm going to show you a video that was done over 20 years ago that expresses the community that we were able to build.
Here we go! This is how it should be done. Like this! Come on! This is how it should be done. Like this! Here we come now with the spirit. Catch the spirit. It is waiting for you. You'll have fun now with the spirit. Find the spirit that is waiting in you.
We're gonna have a good time.
This is how it should be done.
We're gonna have a good time.
Come on! This is how it should be done.
That's what we're gonna do.
Like this!
I think you get the idea. It was very, very exciting back then, but we didn't have the advantages we have today. There wasn't any email, there wasn't any text. Social media was actually people calling each other on a landline and talking to another person about this cool new product. I think about if we were launching a company like this today, it would probably have grown with the speed of Groupon. And I think about this community, and I was really struck in yesterday's presentation when Cam talked about threadless. It was incredible when he described that community and the spirit and how they had a conversation with their constituents. Their customers became part of their business. I think when we worked on the engagement program for Rollerblade, it was a very similar kind of thing. Because it was a new product, it was still in development, and so we invited people to participate in the creation of the brand. And I think that's one of the main reasons why it was as successful as it was. Like I said, today we're going to talk about how to create an engaging marketing experience. And the reason why we're talking about it isn't just because we love to engage people. Yesterday, I felt the conversation kind of stopped a little short in that we need people to click so that they'll engage. We need people to do this so they'll engage. And we didn't go all the way to the end game. The end game of engagement is so that you can drive business performance. And we need to make sure that it isn't just running an engagement campaign because engagement is where we plan on stopping. It's running the engagement campaign so that eventually we have a sustainable impact on business performance. Let me take a detour for a minute, though. It was really odd yesterday, but 3 of the speakers showed slides regarding the death of email. And I figured, oh no, we are really in trouble. Because we've gathered at this thing called the Email Insider Summit. And what we're talking about is the death of email. That sort of seemed absurd. So I went back to my hotel room and I did a little bit of research. And I don't know why we were talking about the death of email, because it seems like email is still as valid marketing alternative as we have today. It seems to be growing. As you can see from here, it's still ranked among the top things that people are investing in who want to build businesses. The metrics look pretty good. The open rates are high. The click-through rate is good. Any direct marketer would be happy with this kind of engagement. So really, what's the problem? Then I started to think, well, maybe there's something fundamentally different about email because we live in a social media world now. So I broke down email to what I consider to be the two essential components of email marketing. I think email marketers want to do one of two things. The first is they want to tell somebody something. And if you think of email marketing, a third, maybe half of the email marketing messages that get sent out tell somebody something. The other is that you want to sell somebody something. So it's kind of an easy thing to understand. When we send out an email marketing message, we have two missions, either to tell somebody something or to sell somebody something. I don't know. So far, nothing seems wrong with that. So then I dove a little bit deeper, and I looked at it from the marketer's perspective, the brand's perspective. We want to tell somebody something. And we would say then to a prospect, I want you to know about this new product or service so that you can think of me when you're ready to engage. Or we want to sell them something. And so the marketer says to the prospect, I'm offering 30% on this item because I need to move it from my shelves to your shelves. Doesn't seem anything wrong there. That seems pretty good. So if a marketer's value proposition is this easy to understand, then where might the problem be? From the prospect's perspective, there really is no problem. Because I think the people you're sending the email messages to are actually pretty receptive. They say, tell me something that will be valuable for me to know and enhance my life in some way. And if you do that, I'm going to be really happy. Well, that's exactly what the marketer is trying to do. So that equation really works. And on the sell side, the prospect might say, sell me something at a fair price that I value and enhance my life in some way. Okay, that's pretty simple. Email marketers want to tell me something or sell me something. And you know what? I want to know what they have to say, and I want to buy, if it's at a fair price and it delivers real value, what they have to sell. Well, email marketing should be going wild. This sounds great. Exactly what the marketers or the brands want to tell you or sell you is what the prospects want to receive or want to buy. I think the problem with email marketing today is ubiquity. And this is a huge problem. If we're sending out 1 billion messages and they're all ending up in my email box, that's a problem because I can't deal with it. And the problem is easy to understand. It's caused by accessible technology, low cost, easy deployment. The problem today is every company, big or small, largely thanks to Yes Mail and Strong Mail and other ESPs, largely thanks to savvy brands who've mustered up the strength to figure out how to send out marketing emails, every company can do it. And every company tries to do it. So it creates a dynamic which I refer to as the email coma. And our challenge, the way we achieve success will be is if we can move somebody from this state of email coma, inbox overload, to something that's a little happier, a little more upbeat, what we might call engaged. So how do we do that? That's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the time. I want to make sure everyone's awake out there. These lights are really bright in my eyes, so if you could, please stand up. Have everyone just stand up, please. Okay, shake it out a little bit. Okay, you can sit down. Okay, why'd you stand up? Well, either because I told you to or I asked you to and you were willing to comply, right? You're cattle. That's good. You know what? The people you're sending emails to, they're cattle too. And it should be this easy. If there's an audience that's somewhat engaged and you ask them to do something that has a low cost and the promise of some value, I'm sorry to disappoint, but the promise of some value, then you're willing to do it. Not a huge investment to get up out of your seat for a minute. You expected something more, I know, but that's okay. There will be later on. And you stood up. One of the things that's so striking to me, surveying the landscape of email marketing, is that people simply forget to ask for what they want out of the prospect. Now, the retailers do a much better job. They're pretty good about saying, we want you to buy something. But the rest of us just are so excited to share some information, we sort of forget email marketing 101. And I think Della phrased it a different way, but he said essentially, keep it simple, keep it basic, be smart in how you operate. And I would say CTAs work. Let's use them. Just simply ask people in a nice way what you want them to do, and I think you'll be very surprised. And I won't ask you to stand up again without really delivering real value, because you can only get away with that trick once, because I really don't believe that people are cattle. They're individuals, and they need to be respected every time you ask something from them. But we do have another exercise. I hope you can read this. I want you to look at these 3 inbox messages, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hands in a minute. Which subject line do you think will be most effective? They're coming from company 1, company 2, or company number 3. Just take a minute. Can all of you read them? Okay. Is this mic on? Yeah, you can read them? Okay, you've got your choice? How many picked number 1? That's pretty good. Well, the good news is that if you pick number 1, you probably are able to engage people because number 1 is a right answer because it offers a reward. And one of the best ways to engage people is to offer something to them that they value. How many of you picked number 2? Okay, well, don't feel bad because number 2 is also very effective at engaging people because it offered the promise of a group validation. And we're going to go into each of these in a little bit greater detail in a minute. How many of you picked number 3? No one. Oh, 1. Thank you. Because you know what? You're right as well. Number 3 expresses a sense of shared values. And when you look at how to engage people, it's really quite simple. If you do 1 or more of these 3 things, I guarantee you, you will be able to engage your constituents. These things have been tried probably by hundreds of marketers. Maybe they use different terms or different words, but these 3 things work every single time. If you can, in fact, do it in a way that's going to register or resonate or be relevant to a prospect. Let's look at offering rewards. If the reward is relevant, if it's believable, if it's valuable, and if it's attainable at relatively low cost, the reward will be compelling and it will prompt the prospect to a position of engagement. Rewards come in a few different varieties. Everyone understands the economic reward where you promise to save something or a discount or if you do this, there'll be some economic reward. But other rewards to consider are emotional rewards, and these can be very, very powerful. When you're offering a reward, a subject line might say, "Feel safer." There are people in the world, believe it or not, who are not always driven by 30, 40, 50, 80% off. They're more emotionally driven. And so use an emotional reward to attract people like them, and you'll have better engagement. Another kind of reward is an educational reward. And this is important for anybody building a career or wanting to do something, but they haven't quite done it. So you might say, learn to shoot like a professional photographer. And that could be a good subject line for that kind of person who is looking for a different kind of reward. Not an emotional one, not an economic one, but possibly an educational one. And there's lots of other kinds of rewards. But let's go on to that second metric. Group validation. If the prospect feels that they're among colleagues and coworkers who are engaged, there's sort of a human instinct, a bandwagon kind of effect that, well, if they're engaged, I want to be engaged too. And so if you were to, in a subject line, talk about the popularity of something, or list numbers of people who recently joined, it can have this effect on people so that they are motivated to engage. Group validation can be very powerful. And like rewards, group validation comes in different flavors. You can have the promise of a team victory. As a team, we can accomplish more things. Excuse me, I gotta get some water. So as a team, you can accomplish more things. There's comfort in numbers. And a lot of people will do something just because a lot of other people are doing something. This one I like to subtitle the Facebook effect, because there's a lot of over 50-year-olds who have no business on Facebook. They don't know what it's about. They don't even know why they're doing it. But it's just a question of sheer numbers. They keep hearing about all these people doing it, and they have no real motivation, but they've become highly engaged in promotions suggesting that they try out Facebook just because of the bandwagon effect. So many people have asked them to do it. So there's comfort in numbers. And then one of my favorites in the group validation category is the circle of trust. If people you trust are doing something, then you are more likely to become engaged and try it yourself. The last element of the three things that are necessary for engagement is what I refer to as shared values. And shared values are maybe the most powerful. They're also the hardest to affect. And our polling a little bit earlier, when I asked those questions of which email subject line was going to be most effective, in your opinion, we only got one vote for shared values, because it's kind of hard to describe. You can't really put it in a subject line. It's something that over time can be the most powerful driver of engagement, but is a little more difficult to execute. Shared values might go like this. My values are extremely important to me. To find a merchant who believes in what I believe in is very rare and very special. If I find a company like that, they'll have me for life. And I think this is really true. How many of you use a proposition, a value promise of shared values? My company believes in something, and if you believe in it, join together. Anybody? That's good. And what value are you expressing to people?
Respect the outlet. There's no shortcuts around it. Relationship is critical.
I think respect is a great one, a really great one. I love this picture. It shows the Whole Earth catalog, and because it expresses, if you're old enough to remember what the original Whole Earth catalog was in 1970, it expresses this sort of earthy, crunchy, respect the earth, ecology kind of mindset. It was a catalog filled with things to save and recycle and do things like that. And the date on it is 1970, and right next to it you have a mobile app 40 years later. It's still that same shared value that this company is trying to express, and how have they been able to engage, how have they been able to hold on to customers all that time? It's because of this deep sense of shared values. And like the other elements, essential elements of engagement, rewards and group validation, shared values comes in different varieties. We talked about this promise of integrity, and maybe that's that opt-in, a promise of respect. There can be a promise of hand craftsmanship. There could be a shared value, and lots of companies use this, of maybe American pride. Pride is a very powerful driver of engagement. There could be family values. If you express being a family value kind of company, you're more likely to get an engaged customer to participate. Let me go back here. I wanted to show something that we did that really expresses this sentiment of shared values and give you a little quick case study. Mayo Clinic, which is, everyone know who Mayo Clinic is? It's one of the leading medical institutions in the world, probably. They save lives, they treat people, it's world-renowned. And you wouldn't think that they'd have trouble hiring people, but in fact, they have trouble hiring the right people. So they hired our firm to go in and do a cultural assessment and figure out why employees were so engaged. What was it that really was motivating them to want to work for the company, so that then, through email, through career sites, they could translate that value structure, that cultural construct that they have, into marketing messages. And what we found out was a little bit expected, in that, well, the benefits are really good, and I really want to work for an organization that is solid, and people are always going to get sick because so they're going to need health care, and so the job provides security. But it's this concept of shared values that was a breakthrough. And it's interesting because Mayo Clinic has been around for over 100 years, and no one that we knew in the HR department had really latched on to this concept of shared values. They thought it was about the benefits package, and so their email correspondence with candidates and to recruiters was all about specifics relating to benefits or the work environment, but they didn't just express their values. And so what we did is we said, people come to work for Mayo because they understand the Mayo value structure, because in some way they have touched Mayo Clinic. They've had a cousin, a friend, an uncle, an aunt. Because in our research we discovered that over 50 million people in the United States have been touched either directly or indirectly by Mayo Clinic. That's like a fourth of the population of the United States. And if you were looking for a few employees to come work for you, that's a pretty big pool. So how do we get that pool to join together? How can we create an engagement campaign so that they would all bond, feel a sense of common purpose, give up their email address, and allow us to correspond to them every time we wanted to hire some great people? Well, this movie expresses how we did it. And this movie is made up of, I would say, research-oriented videotape. It doesn't have a lot of polish. They were done in conference rooms, one-on-one and group interviews, and it's a compilation of the sense of shared values that this group expressed.
Being employed with Mayo has been a life-changing experience for me.
But I almost feel like everybody has a story that works here. And the reason why they're here and they're so happy and they're so caring is because they've been there, or they know somebody's been there, and they're, you know, for a second putting that patient into what they have walked away from.
I was a patient here, and my family has been patients here. I genuinely think it's a special place.
When I was a child, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. And so that's why I would come here.
When my dad got sick, that's where he wanted to go. He wanted to go to Mayo. And when I had health problems, that's where my parents took me.
What I'm doing here matters.
It fuels me and it drives me.
If I want to go back into oncology, which is what I believe I need to do for the rest of my career, that I needed to come back to Mayo to do that.
This is going to be crazy, but I feel like I'm...
In the interest of time, I'll stop there. But you can see, just from watching a couple minutes, that it did, I hope it affected you, that it sort of breaks through the clutter. And you might say, okay, that's great, but what does that have to do with email marketing? Well, I think it has a lot to do. Because if, in fact, you intend to engage, if you can find a way to tap into a sense of shared values, something that your company or your brand or the people that you represent believes, and you can tap into that in a constituent group, you'll have a very, very powerful kind of engagement. So just by way of review, 3 reasons why people engage: because you offer a reward, an economic, an educational, and emotional one. There's a sense of group validation, either team or numbers or the circle of trust, or this sense of shared values. Well, this might be obvious to all of you, and I wanted to see if it was, so I did a little bit of search online. And the second one, the 29%, has to do with, I think, this exact topic: figuring out how to deliver relevant, meaningful, impactful kinds of engaging communications. But still, number 1 was segmentation. And that seems to be a favorite subject with email marketers. So let me spend just a couple minutes of how I think segmentation fits into the whole scheme when you're trying to prompt engagement. Another exercise. Close your eyes for a minute, please. Keep them closed. I want you to imagine your primary prospect. When you hit that go button and you send out those 50 million email blasts, there's probably a few different types, but picture one. Picture a person who's reading the email. Okay, you can open them up. Everyone has that mental image? Well, the mental image probably painted a very demographic looking picture. How many of you pictured males? How many females? That's interesting. How many broke it down by age? How many people saw somebody young? That's not too many. How many saw somebody old? How many broke it down and saw somebody of a minority ethnicity? Not very many. That's a little telling. How many saw somebody either real rich or real poor? How many of you are segmenting using basic demographics today? Really, that's shocking. I expected everyone to raise their hands. So when you're sending out email blasts, you're just blasting? It seems to me that you need to narrow the focus a little bit. You probably are, but maybe you're just sleeping. One final kind of demographic consideration when you're trying to prompt engagement might be mobile considerations. How many of you thought of somebody reading the email on a mobile device? Well, I hope next year when I come to the summit, everyone, or at least nearly everyone, will at least have in the back of their mind this person reading the email on a mobile device, because that's something that's surely going to happen. And I think this is sort of step 1 of building a strong engagement email marketing program, but it's only step 1. Segmentation by demographic differentiation is usually, I expect it to be a little bit more common, but it's pretty common, I think, amongst most marketers, because you can measure it, you can count it, it's tangible. But another consideration I think that's very important are psychographics. How many of you, when you thought of that person, thought of what was going on in their mind? Maybe they were an early adopter. That's good. I'm glad. Thank you. Maybe they were an early adopter. And so if you were email marketing to an early adopter and you wanted to engage that person, what would be in your subject line? It's pretty easy. It would be new, because early adopters are all about new. And I would contend if you want to engage that kind of an audience, promising new is way more important than segmenting that person old or young. I'm an early adopter. My daughters are early adopters. If you targeted young females, 25 years old, you'd get my daughter, but you wouldn't get me. If you targeted me, you wouldn't get them. But if you targeted early adopters of, let's say, new technology, and that's who your content was trying to reach, and that's what your segmentation was all about, you probably would stand a better chance. What if it was a fashionista? Now that's easy to say, oh, well, we would sell them clothes. But if you really get into the mindset of the fashionista, her loyalty is very fleeting. And she'll be with you today, but she'll be with whatever is out there next season with somebody else. And so what does that mean in terms of your engagement strategy? It means that you have to work a lot harder with somebody who has a fashionista kind of outlook. What if the person's analytical? They're not going to act fast because they have an analytical mindset. And if you're marketing to people that have this kind of mindset, you need to market to them in a little different fashion. What if they're a bargain hunter? Oh, that's easy. I would send them 50% off. Well, that only tells part of the story, because maybe the bargain hunter is not so much about what he finds, but it's the journey. And so it might be better to market to that person about finding things or discovery. Maybe that's what's really in that person's mind. To be an engagement marketer, you really need to use not only demographic differentiation, but you have to use some of this psychographic differentiation. The last thing I want to talk about with respect to segmentation has to do with context. And this is sort of the leading edge of, I would say, all marketers and email marketing. You need to be conscious of things potentially like weather when you're marketing. If you knew it was going to rain in Boston and you were selling raincoats, that might be a good time to send out that email. Or if you knew somebody was on vacation, it would be great to send them an email that had vacation in the subject line. If they had a predilection either to old technology or to new technology, if they were what's considered a nomad. And my favorite context is if you were marketing to people who lived in the crib, this kind of crib, you would know in advance, send this person only high-powered financial kinds of information, because that's the context, that's their situation, that's what they want to hear. And some segmentation based on age or gender isn't going to cut it. Okay, so we're getting toward the end here. We have engagement. We know who they are, demographic segmentation. We know why they buy, psychographic segmentation. And we know their current situation, sort of a contextual framework. So what do we do now? The last thing I want to talk to you about is this engagement continuum. I don't think we should think of engagement as an event. They aren't engaged when they first click. When our company thinks of engagement, we think of 5 steps to engagement. And it's a process. And when somebody has never heard of your product, the engagement technique that you need to use is one of enticement. After they're enticed, you want to evoke some kind of a response. That might be when you ask for a click or you ask for some information from them. But after they give you the information, then their mind kicks in and they want to start thinking, oh, I want to know more about this organization before I take one more step toward engagement. But after they know, then they have to feel good. Then they want to be happy. You talked this morning in the first presentation about, what did you use, entertainment or? Entertainment. Right. And so you need to include an element of entertainment. And the last thing you want to do in order to engage an audience and is endear them. You want them to fall in love with your brand. So when you're thinking about engagement, think of where your constituents are in this process. If they're in an early stage, you have to try to engage them by enticing them. If they're a little bit further along this continuum, try to evoke a response from them. And the key is, in all of your marketing efforts, try to move them along this continuum from I don't care to I'm a brand evangelist and I'm going to do anything for your company. In fact, I love your company so much that I'm going to tell all my friends about it. And you just want to move people along. They need some education at some point. They need some entertainment. And eventually you want to endear them to your company. In the interest of time, shall I skip to the conclusion, or I could show one more example?
Let's go to the conclusion.
Okay. To summarize, I can show you the example a little bit later, or I'll also be leading one of the breakout sessions, and I'll be glad to talk to you a little bit more about how you can take some of this strategic theory and put it into practice in actual campaigns. But I want to leave you with this sort of checklist for creating an engagement-focused campaign. The first thing you need to do is you need to figure out, okay, how are we going to trigger engagement? We're going to do it with rewards. We're going to do it through group validation. We're going to do it with shared values. The next thing you need to do is who are we going to try to reach? And be really clear in your mind how you're going to reach that prospect, who they are, what their mindset is, and in what context are they going to be receiving this message. Again, YesMail had a great presentation where they showed makeovers. If they're reading it at their desk on their computer, it's one kind of context or situation. If they're reading it on a mobile device, it's another. If they're reading it on a mobile device, waiting for a bus in a rainstorm, it's yet another kind of context. And soon, we'll be able to know all that information. So segment your audience. Try to imagine who they are, what they're thinking, and where they are when they're reading the email. And the last thing you need to do when you roll out your campaigns, don't think of engagement as a point in time. Think of it as a continuum. Okay, with this group, this segment, this set of emails, we're going to try to entice them and then move them along all the way through to advocacy or a highly engaged state. If you do that, I think you'll be able to create meaningful engagement in a sustainable fashion and provide a competitive business advantage. And I say to all of you, email campaigners of the world unite. The future of email marketing lies in your hands. Let's get serious. Let's get smart. I think it's time to engage. Thank you. Do we have time for questions or no?
Yeah, let's we got maybe time for one question.
That puts a lot of pressure on the one question.
It does put a lot of pressure on the one question. Why don't we do this? Because we are.
We'll do it in the breakout.
We did we got start a little bit late, and we're just a little bit behind schedule. As Ken mentioned, he will be moderating one of the roundtables, and so an opportunity there to sit down and talk through some more of the concepts, and really appreciate, just the reminder of, engagement. And Martin Lieberman actually tweeted this, I thought, very well. Engagement isn't an event, really. It's a process, and thinking through that process, and it's a wonderful reminder for us this morning. So, at this time, I'd like to